All right, my name is Tyler Watkins, and my presentation is going to be on why the United States should not implement a carbon tax. So, why a carbon tax in the first place? So, the people that say that we should advocate for a carbon tax, one, they point to the deficit that we have a $24.29 trillion deficit in national debt. They say that it'll force businesses to switch over to green energy like offshore wind and just hydropower. And then also will lead to job generation in those industries, in those new green industries. And also, one of the other big points is to help the environment overall. And the questions I had going in was what are the effects of a CO2 tax on business and the economy, and why the United States should not implement a carbon tax. So, first off, again, this is a graph of the national debt over the years. That's 1968 all the way over to 2023. Those are as you can see, that's what the national debt is going to do. And this is, again, why the people who advocate for a carbon tax say that we need to implement a carbon tax to help with the national debt, because they say in the first decade it would generate $80 billion in the first decade. So that'll take a nice chunk out of that $26 trillion. But $80 billion in the first decade is still less than 10% of the national debt right now. So it's something, but we need to do something else. We need to do something different. And then my first point that we shouldn't use nuclear energy. I mean, we shouldn't use a carbon tax, is it'll lead to nuclear windfall. For the first time ever, nuclear energy is going to be competitive with fossil fuels. So businesses that do stay here in the States are going to switch to nuclear energy. They're not going to switch to offshore wind. They're not going to switch to solar power. They're going to switch to nuclear power, which is going to lead to a proliferation of uranium, and is going to lead to more nuclear weapons in countries and certain terrorist groups that should not have nuclear weapons, which then could lead to a nuclear war in the future. And also, here's another graph. Australia did implement a CO2 tax right here in 2012, and you see there's a huge spike in adjusted household electricity prices. So, what that means, if we put a tax on carbon fuels, carbon is used to create electricity, and the places and again the businesses that do stay in the United States, they're not going to eat that cost. They're going to pass that cost on to the consumer, which means my electricity bill and everyone else's electricity bill is going to go up in price, which is going to put a lot of strain on the middle class, who already is which is shrinking right now even as we speak. Also, these are the Rust Belt states, and the Rust Belt states are all of the places that create steel. And again, steel is a very carbon intensive process to make. So, if you again implement a carbon tax, these states in particular, every state is going to get hit, but these states in particular are going to get hit the hardest, and the working classes in those states are going to be destroyed. Because if you put a carbon tax on steel industries, they're not going to eat that cost. They're either going to pass it on to the consumers, or they are going to lay off all of their working class workers. And again, they're working class workers. They're just they're barely doing enough just to get by to make ends meet. And then you're going to put another squeeze on them, and you're going to wreck the working class and put them into the poor class. So finally, the end of my research, no carbon tax. Just to recap, it's going to increase nuclear weapons because of a nuclear windfall of businesses switching from carbon to nuclear and not solar or hydroponic fuels. It's going to again squeeze the middle and working class. The middle class all of their energy prices are going to go up. The working class, all of their energy prices are going to go up, and they're also going to get laid off in certain industries. It's going to devastate the steel and manufacturing industry. And that's, again, like I said, it's not just the steel industry, it's any manufacturing industry that's going to get wrecked, and it's going to drive businesses overseas to other countries that do not have a carbon tax. So, what do we need to do first? Well, it would help if we got out of a whole bunch of wars that we're in right now. I think that would help a lot to lower the deficit. More research is needed though to figure out a different solution. I do not envy the people that have to figure out a solution to the deficit problem, and and the and what we can do to help the environment so that we can pass on a better world to our children. But again, I just feel that in the end it's going to wreck all of the working class and middle class people. It's not going to do what's intended to help the environment or help the deficit. So that's why you should not vote for carbon tax. Thank you.